I'm in Google Maps now because I'm going to give a parable or two. The stories I'm about to tell now didn't actually happen in history. Okay? These are for illustrations, even though I base the stories on an historical context that did happen in the early 19th century. So the parables are inspired by things that actually happened, but the parables themselves didn't happen. Okay, so let's begin. So in the early 19th century, there were Chinese kings in the south, because China was an empire led by a Manchu dynasty, where the emperor came from, and the emperor was the head above all the Chinese kingdoms. So in the south, you had this Chinese kingdom where the people were fed up with the Qin emperor. So there was a revolt amongst the leaders to get rid of the Chinese imperial rule. And they managed to kick out many of the imperial officials. And due to a financial crisis that was going on in the Chinese empire at the time, the emperor did not respond to the attacks. But this revolt led to the exhaustion of the kingdom's resources. So the kingdom was bankrupt itself. There was not really much money in the country left. And, well, they lost. It would just be a matter of time before the imperial army of China would come back to restore order in the kingdom. But now, there were people that realized that there was no victory against the Chinese emperor. They realized that it was all fake. They knew that the celebration of victory against the emperor was based on hoax. So there were two options people who were aware of it had. Either they exposed it to the population, or they got along with the scam. Because those that got along with the scam, they benefited from it, because the people that arranged the revolt, they received a lot of support from the locals. And now, as a so-called independent republic, which they were not, they needed taxation to manage their new liberated country. And the population, of course, want to comply with maintaining their liberation from the Chinese emperor. But because the population of that Chinese state were so fed up with the emperor, they were so distracted by their aversion against the emperor that they didn't notice that the people that so-called freed them from the emperor didn't really free them, but really scammed them. So the population believed that they were now a republic and that they would be prosperous without the extortion by the Chinese, by the imperial regime. But the king of that state, he knew about the hoax, and also the people that had arranged the revolt, they were part of the plot. So others who found out, many of them joined the scam, because the new fake republic demanded much taxation from the people, and in that way the population handed in all their wealth. 95% of all the coins, of all the money, ended up in the treasury of the quote-unquote republic. And by doing this, the local king, as well as the conspirators, who together with the king arranged the revolt, they all became filthy rich. And people who knew about it realized if we get along with the scam, we will benefit. Because if we admit that we are being hoaxed, that means that sooner or later, we will have to face that there was no actual plan to get rid of the Chinese emperor. And we have to realize that now most people lost their wealth, so they have no financial means to defend themselves against anything. So soon the imperial force will come and will be worse off. So a lot of folks thought we can better get along with the scam, that at least we'll get some of the pie, so that when the imperial forces come, we'll be better off. Now that's one parable. Now I'm going to give a similar one. There was this jurisdiction in the Americas belonging to a famous empire at the time. And the Republicans, those that wanted to become a republic, they lost. They didn't have support from the people, and they didn't have any money. So the Republicans turned into gangs, stalking the population to get resources for their independence struggle. But there was no, how would I say, support. And due to the violence and the chaos of the independence struggle, there was no export, there was also no import, so the jurisdiction went bankrupt. So the Republicans lost. So what happened? Instead of acknowledging that they've lost, they pretended to the population they've won. There was a surplus of food supplies coming in from a nearby jurisdiction that remained loyal to the empire. So they used those shipments to prove to the population that they've won, they are better off being a republic. So with this fake evidence, they convinced many of the people that they were better off as a republic, and they took down the flag of the empire and they came up with their own republican flag. But it was a hoax. So within a year or two, some of the locals began to ask, okay, if we won from the king across the ocean, if the king's troops that came across the ocean, if we defeated them and we're a republic now, and we're far better off without being governed from some bureaucrats across the ocean, then how come that there's less food around? How come food prices are so high? And it's then that people begin to realize that they've been scammed. But to admit they've been scammed means that they now have to face the situation. And many of them rejoiced against the king and against the empire they used to belong to. So now to face that, all that rejoicing and all that mocking of the king was based on a hoax, that's quite embarrassing. And folks didn't want to face this. So many people agreed, we're not talking about it. Yes, our president is corrupt. Yes, our president lied to us. Yes, those leaders aren't real leaders, they're just scammers. But okay, we don't talk about it, because once we talk about it, we need to address what we did. Because people didn't want to face the humiliation that they were scammed. Because if they would face it and get rid of those corrupt leaders, the only option was to become part of the empire again. And then the whole world would look at them in a very weird way. Because the whole world would tell them, how could you believe, people, that you as a population won a war you were never involved in? How could you folks be convinced by such cheap evidence, by an abundance of fruit, vegetables, and cacao beans? That's all it took to trick you people into believing that they had something to offer? You didn't look at the bigger picture? You didn't think ahead? So the population was quite embarrassed, so they all pretended like they always supported independence. They always pretended as if they were always against the monarchy, or they were always against the king. Why? Because they rather got along with the scam, even though the scam didn't actually benefit them, than for them to acknowledge that they've contributed to their own demise. And everyone who did mention the situation for what it was faced violence. Now, those were two parables. One is based on a similar thing that actually happened, but it's up to you to figure out about which country in Latin America I've spoke of. But in both of these examples, you have people who notice that something doesn't add up, but they don't want to admit it. Because admitting it would imply that they need to take responsibility for the situation to look for solutions. And solutions, let's say solutions were possible, but it wouldn't be easy, and there would be resistance against solutions, so there would be a big fight to go for solutions. But they didn't want to face a fight. They didn't want to face a challenge. So they rather just gave in to the scam and blackmailed others through violence to get along with the scam. And believers, that's how this world operates in general. When you look at it in a universal way or in a spiritual way, you can say that Satan lost, obviously. The demons have nothing to offer. But the world's population are most of the people in the world are self-focused, so they have a narcissistic attitude. They don't want to submit unto Christ. So secretly, they support Satan, even though they don't like Satan. They don't want to be involved with Satan directly, but they still support him covertly because somewhere Satan enables their relief seeking. So Satan knows that he has lost. The demons know that they are finished. And the elite who worship them, at least the wizards amongst elite know that they're going to lose anyway, but they use propaganda to let the population think that Satan has something to offer. That it does reward you to follow the world. So the population is conditioned into thinking that society, or better said, the world, has something valuable to offer, even though it has nothing valuable to offer in the long run. Now, for any commoner to admit that society has nothing valuable to offer in the long run implies that they need to acknowledge that they've been scammed, they've been conditioned in the scam from the time they were young, that they also complied with this scam in the hope to get something out of it. So if they face all of that, then they need to face that they've enabled violence and that they've enabled liars and the worst of the worst. And that means that the only way out is to look for the truth. That means looking for God. But then they need to acknowledge that they're not God. It's going to have deep implications on them. They also need to realize that there is no such thing as privacy. There's no such thing as free will. There's no such thing as you willing with every will. So all those self-entitled delusions that the world of people cling on to, they realize they will all disappear. Those illusions aren't real anyway. So they don't want to deal with the truth because they don't want to comply with justice. That's too scary for them because then they have to realize they don't have any control. That every form of attempt for control is illegitimate. And then they will also need to put up with people who are loyal to the truth to have influence over them. So they don't want all of that. So they won't come out openly and say it, but secretly they are against Christ and they want the scam to be enabled. They don't love the truth, but they have pleasure in unrighteousness. So just let's get through to you. There are people out there who want to get along with the scam. They don't agree with the scam. They don't like the idea they've been scammed, but they rather be part of the scam than having to comply with justice. So that's why they're miserable. Because they don't want to comply with justice, because that would cost them their self-entitled delusions. So they don't want to face themselves. But the scam doesn't really offer anything valuable either. But at least with the scam, they can escape from having to examine themselves. They can flee within the scam. So that's why they prefer the scam. Not that they embrace the scam, not that they rejoice, that they are excited about the scam, but they prefer to get along with the scam so they don't have to face themselves. So let's get through to you. There are people out there who want to get along with the scam, even if they're not happy with the scam. They'll rather be miserable with the scam than being joyful in Christ. You have such creeps. Acknowledge them for what they are. Walk in love towards them, because you can't walk in love with them. I agree with Christ.